This one is on modern data sourcing. So the rapid growth of data sharing in the public sector and beyond is creating an explosion of opportunities for new use cases and joined-up digital services. But there might be limitations when it comes to using external data sources as well as opportunities. And some tried and tested data sources, particularly surveys, which we touched on earlier, are becoming less useful. So our excellent panel are going to talk about various things around the modern practice of data sourcing and what it should look like. So we'll hear first from Giuseppe Salazzo, who's Deputy Director and Head of Data Enablement at DWP Digital, but I think maybe heading to pastures new fairly soon.
Yep, in less than a month's time. So we can talk about all the benefits of moving data when you are moving departments.
Excellent. And then we will hear from Steve Whiting, who is the CEO of Agile. Again, I'll go to each of our panellists for some opening thoughts. We'll have a bit of a conversation, and then we'll come to you, the audience, for questions. So modern data sourcing, Giuseppe.
Yeah, modern data sourcing. So good data sourcing. What is good data sourcing? Good data sourcing is about the ability of answering questions before even we get to the decision-making aspect of it. And what sort of question do we get asked? A couple of examples from my current job. Find us all the people who might be eligible for certain benefits so we can send them letters. So it's not like a precise thing. We need to ship people out to find the data. Or sometimes we have repeatable processes. It's still manuals. Generating national statistics often requires people to follow some recipes. They know where the data is, but they need to go get a new one and rebuild, let's say, the pipeline to get an answer to the national statistics. And sometimes we have fully automated data processes. We do actually, just to mention one between DWP and HMRC, just we are on that topic, which is the bereavement payments. Obviously, payment of a benefit that people need at some of the most vulnerable times of their lives. That's made automated by the ability of sharing via API data between the two departments. So we have the full spectrum, one-offs, repeatable, automated. And if you think about that basically are different degrees of maturity. All this starts with some of our favorite acronyms, DPAA, DSA, and all that amazing stuff. And as we go towards the automated, we get a more mature approach. We know what the stuff is. We know what the processes need to be followed. Sometimes those processes happen once, and they can get, let's say, not reviewed for a long time. And I think that has almost a correspondent aspect in terms of tooling and processes around sourcing. So, we were speaking about data catalogs earlier, and that often starts with, an information asset owner starting to put stuff on an Excel spreadsheet. It progresses into the famous core drilling versions of data catalogs I talk, and those data catalogs in which we put everything, and then we can use almost as a geological tool to understand the history of data. But then we start embedding those tools into business processes, and that's where we simplify things, and good data sourcing becomes almost second skin to the business, not to the data team. So I'd say the two elements there are this stuff to be done well is a journey. The maturity progresses as we work together. So it's a multidisciplinary endeavor.
Steve. Yeah, thanks. Before I sort of focus in on data sourcing as a whole, what I'd like to say is just it's a privilege to hear from some of your panelists earlier, of course. And I've got the benefit of sitting here on the penultimate session and been able to kind of review over the course of the day. And one of the things that's really struck me or resonated with me is the human link. So when we're talking about, I guess for me, it's beginning with the end in mind. At the end is that we deliver valuable services for UK taxpayers and also UK citizens. So when I stand back and I look at the whole, I can see a number of foundational things, to Giuseppe's point, that need to be addressed on this journey of delivering successful services. And we've talked today about maturity, culture, trust, capability. So all of these are what we would call foundational necessities that would be part of a wider data strategy. So what are we aiming to achieve? How are we going to achieve it? What is possible? We talked about AI and the art of the possible there, but also what AI cannot do. So these are just the components that have to be addressed en route, and data sourcing is one of them. How do we make sure, particularly in a collaborative society, you can see how much cross-pollination there is across each of the government organisations, or how much there could be, and the opportunity there. It's like, how do we get the foundations right for that? So how do we get the data products right? How do we get the controls right to share that data, make sure it's trusted and mature, to Jeremy's point?
Brilliant. I might sort of come straight back on that question and sort of ask, what do we think is stopping us from doing some of those things at the moment, and how can we bring a sort of useful focus onto those foundations and do it better?
I think it was it's talked about in the first session with Amy, which was the infrastructure really. And I'm a technologist at heart, so I kind of I have habits of jumping in a bit early to look at the technology stack. But I think what we're seeing in the industry, I work in public sector and private sector, we're seeing organisations that want to choose technology or data platforms essentially that are standardised, simplified and frictionless. So what we used to see is we had data sprawl, and more recently we're seeing technology sprawl. So we're seeing lots and lots of types of technology for ultimately very similar goals. And so what we're seeing and how the world's evolving is the hyperscalers are converging their technology stacks so that they have a data ecosystem, all of your data capabilities. You have data fabric, so how you store that data. And then ultimately how you build in AI native language for agentic and generative AI. So we're seeing all of the large players. Salesforce is a good example of an organisation that's acquired Tableau for visualization, MuleSoft for API integration, and now Informatica for a wider set of information management technologies. So they're good examples of how the world's converging around some of the hyperscalers. And I think that standardized, simplified architecture will break down some of the barriers that you talked about that allow us to share data better, collaborate better, and ultimately reach a successful conclusion sooner.
And I'd say the way to understand if we are sourcing data the right way, I mean, obviously there's a huge technological aspect to this, but it boils down to 2 points. Is the data being delivered promptly? So how do we understand if that data is recent, current, the most accurate version? One of the transformations we did was able to bring the data sourcing of the single housing benefit extract, which is quite important because it allows people to be paid the right benefit, but also to allow local authorities to recoup any payment made in mistake, from 6 weeks to 24 hours. Now, the more you can do with that, you understand that the data is being found in the right possible way. And the other is actually to make it measurable. So how do we address any problem that has a data component is by trying to evaluate how those processes evolve and how they deliver. Are they delivering the intended outcomes? How fast are they doing that? And can we address the data quality and the questions around the beneficiaries? Are they the right people and all that?
Thanks.
Yeah, I think my point to build again on that is we're looking at sort of data products really. So how do we? I think this theme started really with democratization of data, when organisations and government departments realised how much you could excel by having data-driven solutions. So there was a move towards democratization of data. Then there was a move to sharing data, and of course, as part of that, we're talking about data products, things like data marketplaces and exchanges, and the ability to serve up data, which is trusted but adds value, and is a reusable set of information that can be serviced across multiple organisations.
Giuseppe, you sort of said that good modern data sourcing is multidisciplinary. What disciplines do we need to bring together, and what does a good collaboration look like? This
The obvious answer is all of them. I think there is a problem here, which is obviously data is a technical topic. Building data pipelines requires people who are technical about building those data pipelines. The thing is, those people are not necessarily, they shouldn't be the people understanding the problem that we're talking about. So there are people in our teams, in our organizations that have been experienced at certain types of policies. In some other occasions, there are people who've worked in a variety of jobs, and they might have seen how, I don't know, people engage with the organization. Obviously, DWP, we are a huge organization that delivers to the public. So some of my colleagues would have been working on frontline, and so having something to say about how those customers engage with the organization. And then obviously we have people who understand the legal aspects of data sharing. They were talking about data sharing. Data sharing is not just a problem across government, but even within large organizations, you have to have some checks and balances about how you use or reuse the data that you already have. So I don't think data will ever be something where they defined number of let's say professions or roles. It needs to really be in a case by case situational analysis, and to me, like working in an agile way, iteratively bringing in people who matter. I mean, we have this, I would say, not very good tradition to civil service about meetings about everything, right? And I think there is a way to have the right meeting, which is let's not always have the same people in the meeting. We call to that meeting people that matter to take an informed decision about what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah, same sort of principle again, really. You need, in terms of the capability that you need, one of the things that resonated with me again earlier was curiosity. In our industry, we need sort of digital expertise, capabilities, but you also need an interest to really get into the depth of, what you're trying to build, how you're going to design something, how you deploy it. Because if you haven't got that curiosity, you lose the passion. So for us, it's about identifying those individuals that have got the curiosity, that think from the, with the end in mind, and that can build the foundations to achieve that.
Thanks. I think at least one of you mentioned AI earlier, obviously, obligatory mention on any panel these days. What are the risks as well as the opportunities of involving AI in sourcing data?
I can take that. I think when we look at AI, we say AI readiness. Are organizations ready to deploy AI safely? Is their data trusted? Have they got the right processes? And we talked about GDPR earlier. That's been really good foundations for ensuring privacy. But, have they got the data in a state that's fit for training AI as well, feature engineering AI? And again, that comes back to the fundamentals, information maturity, where you are on the curve, how well governed your data is, how you understand its lineage, that whatever solutions you're building are not creating technical debt of the future. I think what I find really exciting at the moment is, we're in a fast-paced industry, technology, but with AI, we've really kind of hit the accelerator, and things are moving so fast that not only do you have to deal with today's challenges, but you have to architect and design solutions that are ahead of the curve for tomorrow. Otherwise, you're just creating technical debt for the future, custodians to sort out.
Can I add, this is actually the line I used to have when I was in my previous job in the NHS, and which is AI is not special. We should treat AI exactly as we treat every other tool, which means we try and understand what are the processes in which it's deployable, in which it performs better. And once again, we evaluate and measure. We shouldn't just jump on the bandwagon. Obviously, there's a lot of benefit in moving jobs into working in AI accelerator, and for that reason, I think that there is a benefit, but that benefit can only be realized by measuring, evaluating, and doing things as we would do for any other tool. And if we do that, probably there's quite a few opportunities out there. But we need to work on AI in a way that is not just safe and ethical. We need to think. I always mention the word intersectionality about the data needs to power that AI. We also need to make sure that that benefit is accessible by the public as well as the organizations. Yeah, I think that's a good opportunity there, but there's also risks. On one risk, actually, there's one thing I'd like to say. Obviously, if we think about the public sector, the civil service, we are a large organization, which means that we will have different pockets of risk and different attitude to risk, and that's it, the nature of the organization. So a lot of, I think, progress in this space can be done by trying to openly and transparently engage with the issues that are presented by innovation, by new things.
Yeah, I think on the point about being in the public sector is you've got a great opportunity to work with each other, collaborate, and do it in a way that is not competitive. In the private sector, of course, that information sharing knowledge is not to the same level that can be achieved in a group like this, because everyone's got a common interest at heart. There's no competition, and the knowledge share and the information share and the data share needs to come together. And it's great to see audiences like this that are keen on pursuing that agenda.
Right, I'll come to the audience shortly, but you've set up my next question really nicely, which is what can we learn from how other sectors approach questions of data sourcing, which might be negative lessons as well as positive ones?
Got quite a few negative lessons.
You actually the public sector.
I think from a private sector perspective, because things are so competitive and data is a real differentiator, I think they often look from the outside in. So what data is out? What data is available in marketplaces? How can I augment my internal information to create me new products or services for consumers that are going to outcompete my competitors? So they almost take an outside in view. And I think in the public sector, my perception is, we serve our peers and our colleagues in our teams. Then we look across departments, and there's a lot of work to get to that stage before we look at how can we share across organisations. So I think are there ways and opportunities that we can take a private sector mindset, a competitive mindset, look at the information that's out there before focusing on your own immediate teams.
Maybe sometimes we can also try and reframe some of our language around these things. I mean, we do this often. I mean, I do it myself. I'm not saying that anyone is guiltier than me on this, but we talk about data sharing as the first thing we talk about, while in reality, what we're trying to do is to achieve a certain outcome.
Yeah.
So if we start from the outcomes and then we go back to what data is needed and all that, probably we can serve a better purpose for our data.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll come to the audience now. Anyone want to raise a hand to ask a question on modern data sourcing?
I'm glad you can see hands because all I can see is light.
Right.
Otherwise, I have a couple on Slido, unless anyone wants to put a hand up. Let's go to Slido in that case. We've got two questions, so I'll put them both, and you can choose to answer one or both of them. One is, everyone keeps talking about federation. I haven't seen anyone doing it, ? And the other one is, how important is agreeing or assigning a business data owner within the business at the point of data sourcing?
The first one, I would say, the NHS is obviously doing a federated data platform, so I'm not sure if that's what the question alludes to, but there is at least that example. Whether that's successful or not, obviously, is for the owners to deliberate, but there is definitely an attempt at looking at data from a federated point of view in an organization. Is actually not even one organization, it's actually a collection of organizations there. So I would say there is that example. Watch that space. It might have good lessons. Just to comment on that.
Yeah, again, I think from a federation point of view, if we're talking about data products and we're talking about curating trusted sources of information and making them available through either government, GovUK data marketplaces or commercially available marketplaces, then by your nature, you're creating federation. So as to whether that's adopted is another question. But I think that focus on value and data as a value enabler, and data products, and then federating those to bring availability to them, is probably the right optics to start with.
Thanks. We've got another one on Slido, which is, how do you prioritize what you fix in your data ecosystem first? Strategy, systems, skill shortages, or implementing AI, as a few examples?
All of them. No, obviously, I suppose the question is what has the largest impact, the biggest impact, as we get funded to do things. And obviously, there's that old GDS mantra about fund teams, not projects, which I think in this space is particularly important, because if you can fund teams, many of the skills that are required to deliver many of these things are translatable and transferable from one to the other. So I'd say the best way to prioritize would be to make sure that, and that actually links up to the message that the previous panel had about capability, skills, and especially understanding of data issues at the top, because data is easy, but data is difficult. Data is something that doesn't require everyone in this room or in the upper spheres to be a data scientist, a data engineer, or a data governance expert, but the awareness of all those areas in delivering innovation and solid business pipelines and processes is necessary these days.
Yeah, from my perspective, as a time spend, where do people spend their time? Gartner refers to this as kind of bimodal. So bimodal means one mode is your business as usual, making sure your infrastructure's tight, you're servicing day-to-day requirements. And the other is, how are you being more agile? How are you strategically moving the dial? And what are you innovating? How are you setting up your teams? What are you driving forwards from a POC or an MVP perspective? So you can need that kind of bimodal, and you need the right balance of priorities and time spent between both.
I've got one more question from Slido, which is, what is the biggest challenge AI will pose on data sourcing?
I think this is a very generic question, and it's different from process to process. So I'd go back to user needs, use cases, user research, the ability to build pipelines and to source the data the right way. I would say often data that is collected for one purpose doesn't necessarily fit another purpose. And I suppose that the right way to go around this is to really try and use, to use your words, to build this thing as products. Products can evolve, products can have a roadmap, products can be repurposed, improved over time. And that's, I think, the way to go. But I would be very wary of saying you can just repurpose your data for an AI purpose. AI is many different things. And sorry, I'm blubbering now, but
but to extend on that, it's the products that you were using to train your AI models. That is if you look at the flip side, is what are you trying to achieve with AI? Is it an agentic approach? Is it a generative approach? What's the outcome you're looking for? And then working back, what data do you need? And how is that data going to be used to train and improve models better? So I sort of see them as symbiotic. You need the data products to train and feature engineer your AI models. You almost can't, one doesn't exist without the other.
there's obviously a difference if we're talking about using or reusing AI-driven tools or pre-made models, which many of us are doing already. In even our predictive text in our phone is fundamentally an AI from that point of view. Or if we're talking about training models or retraining models to make them customized. And those are two very different problems, because in one case, we're talking about something that it's still a technical skills, understanding if the model is correct. We all need to check if the predictive test is saying the right thing, because otherwise we send the wrong message to the wrong person. But on the other hand, building a model or retraining a model is obviously a way more technical skill that not everyone needs to have. And I think we need to really be focusing on the difference between these two.
Yeah, from a differentiator point of view, using commercially available large language models that we do at the moment is mainly a productivity gain. How can you accelerate what you're doing? How can you deliver it faster? How can you augment what you're doing with AI? I think the real value add is when you're starting to use your own, sometimes called SLM, small language models, which is your own data sets and your own IP, really. That allows you to differentiate the services that you're delivering for the UK.
I'll finish with the Christmas list question. One thing that you would like from Santa on modern data sourcing?
I've got one that's wider than modern data sourcing.
Go for it.
Which is, I would, looking across the audience, it'd be interesting to have what is one takeout everyone in the audience has. So when they get back into the office, what have they learned from today that they're going to absolutely prioritise and deliver on? And I think it's called incremental gains, the 1%ers. If everyone's can move the dial 1%, there's easily over 100 people in this audience. So it's if that's my wish list, it's what everyone here is taking out and what they're going to deploy when they get back into the office.
Last for a non-data thing, more openness and engagement. I think we need in public discourse that balance between outcomes we're trying to achieve and potential risks, being open about both sides, trying to be around the table with both. It's what I want.
Brilliant. Thank you. In a moment, I'm going to release you to a 10-minute comfort break. That is just to use the bathroom, not to go networking or for lots of tea and coffee. I'm not sure how that would work. But before I allow you to do that, please do join me in saying a big thank you to Giuseppe and Steve. Thank you.